Let me tell you something that might sting. Men don't care how much you do for them. You can cook every meal, send every thoughtful message, be there every time they call, bend over backwards to support them, and it still won't make them stay. Because what you do doesn't equal how they feel. And men don't stay for what you do. They stay for how they feel with themselves when they are around you. This truth is not pleasant. It's not wrapped in soft words or dressed up to protect your feelings. But it is liberating if you're ready to hear it. Because once you understand what actually drives male loyalty, and more importantly, what doesn't, you stop exhausting yourself trying to earn love the wrong way. And I get it. You've been told your whole life that effort equals connection. That if you give more, love harder, stay loyal, stay patient, do enough, eventually the right man will see you, value you, choose you. But here's the truth most people won't admit, especially not in polite company or safe little relationship groups. Men are not loyal to kindness, to sacrifice, or even to love, not by itself. They are loyal to how you make them feel about themselves when they are around you, period. That truth unlocks a reality for women that can be radical, or painful, depending on how ready you are to drop the fantasy. So let me ask you, have you ever watched a woman meet every need a man had and still get left for someone who did less? Have you ever been in a situation where you gave everything, showed up when he needed, handled the emotional labor, and it still ended with him backing away, while someone else came along, less invested, less perfect, but somehow captured him completely? That's not random. That's how loyalty actually works in the male psyche. It's driven by attraction, respect, emotional resonance, not by a record of everything you've sacrificed. See, when you orient your energy around doing, fixing, giving, pleasing, what you're trying to say is, I'm showing love. But what he feels is something very different. He feels your anxiety, your fear of losing him. And people don't stay loyal to fear. They don't even stay loyal to comfort. They stay loyal to meaning. And when comfort costs them meaning, men walk. Because male loyalty doesn't track your actions, it tracks its own emotional reward. Your presence, not your effort. Your self-worth, not your service. And the mistake so many women make is thinking that demonstrating loyalty will automatically generate loyalty in return. That being endlessly supportive will earn their place. That putting the relationship first will inspire him to do the same. But you can't turn emotional neediness into emotional depth. You can't transform effort into admiration. You can't trade sacrifice for status in his heart. And that hurts, doesn't it? It hurts to realize that loving a man the way you want to be loved does not guarantee his loyalty. Because if a man does not respect you emotionally, if he doesn't see strength in you, if you don't hold yourself with value, he won't cling to your kindness. He'll quietly file it in the back of his mind while his heart drifts towards something that feels alive. Because effort can't compete with connection. Sacrifice can't power chemistry. A mile-long list of good deeds can't replace the gravity of self-worth. And that's where so many heartbreaks begin, not with betrayal, but with imbalance. With one person giving to prove they deserve love, and one person accepting without ever attaching. Now, don't twist this. I'm not saying men are ungrateful. I'm not saying they don't notice kindness or soften to care. But noticing isn't bonding. Liking something or appreciating something is not the same as being loyal to it. And people, men especially, do not bond through guilt or obligation. They bond through respect, through energy, through emotional magnetism that makes them want to show up, not because you did something, but because you are someone. So, if effort doesn't win loyalty, what does? I'll tell you this, men become loyal to women they admire, to women who carry themselves with undeniable emotional sovereignty, women who can love without begging, women who don't threaten to leave, but would if their dignity was compromised, women who don't try to prove their value because they live it. Overgiving is not strength. Overfunctioning is not power. Chasing, pleasing, bending out of shape to accommodate a man's inconsistency is not love. It's fear. And that fear is what fractures attraction. Think of it this way. Loyalty flows in the direction of respect, and respect follows boundaries, not rules, not ultimatums, not manipulation, boundaries. How you carry yourself, what you will and won't allow, what energy you return and what energy you starve, and sometimes what you walk away from without flinching. That strength anchors his emotional compass. It makes him feel secure not just in you, but in himself, because he knows this woman only lets high-quality energy stay. And if he gets to be chosen by her, he better step all the way up. But let's bring it back. Let's say you're in it right now. You've been doing everything right, carrying the weight, fixing the problems, giving your best, and wondering why he's slowly slipping away. I want you to pause, not panic. Stop trying to fix emotional distance with more effort. Just pause and ask yourself, how am I showing up emotionally? What version of me is he experiencing? Someone who is radiant, growing, full of life and self-worth? Or someone anxious, reactive, worried, constantly trying to prove I deserve his presence? Because one brings him closer and one pushes him away. See, your inner world paints the entire relationship. You don't need to chase him. You need to return to yourself. Because the woman who knows her value doesn't need to convince anyone of it. She doesn't panic at distance. She doesn't demand loyalty. She draws it magnetically. Because that woman, just by being herself, forces a man to decide, can I rise to meet her emotional strength, or will I fall back and feel the weight of losing her? That's the only question that ever matters. And the answer doesn't come from what you do for him. It comes from who you are when you're not trying to keep him. You know what's wild? The very thing women do to try and prove their value often becomes the reason they lose it in a man's eyes. It's not fair, and it's definitely not intuitive. You're taught that love is service. That being a good woman means anticipating his needs, keeping the peace, proving your consistency, and carrying the relationship when he starts to slip. You think, if I just hang in there long enough and give without keeping score, he'll realize I'm the one. But here's the brutal truth. When you keep giving without return, without boundaries, without reflection, you don't come across as loyal. You come across as dispensable. When you absorb behavior that disrespects you in the name of being easygoing or supportive, you're not earning emotional points. You're quietly teaching him that your standards are optional. And the second he learns that, the second he realizes that disrespect doesn't disqualify him, your perceived value begins to drop. Not because you aren't incredible, but because what comes without challenge is rarely appreciated in the human mind. Especially in male psychology, where effort is intrinsically tied to emotional investment. Men don't invest deeply in what costs them nothing. It doesn't mean they're cruel, or selfish, or calculating. It's just how the human brain assigns value based on scarcity, standards, and energy exchange. And this is where things start to get painful. Because the more you sense a man pulling away, the more effort you tend to pour in. The more you hyper-analyze your own actions. Maybe if I phrase it differently. Maybe if I give him space. Maybe if I give more of myself, he'll come back emotionally. But what you don't realize is that every additional act of service, without any return of effort, punches a hole in your own sense of worth. And men can feel that. They can feel when your giving has become a cry for recognition instead of an act of abundance. They feel the shift from confidence to negotiation, from connection to leverage, from mutual desire to silent desperation. And when that shift happens, something dislodges inside them. The trust, the respect, the pull-it begins to dissolve. Not because you became less loving, but because you stopped being in your power. That's what they're loyal to, even if they can't articulate it. A woman rooted in her own value. A woman who can say no with grace and mean it. A woman who says, I love you, I support you, but I won't collapse myself to be close to you. That type of woman is unforgettable because she's not afraid to lose a man if it means keeping herself. And that creates a gravity most men never recover from. See, you've got to understand, men are constantly, unconsciously observing how a woman values herself. Every time you let something slide that shouldn't slide, every time you give more while getting less, every time you abandon your voice just to preserve closeness, you're rewriting the contract of the relationship, and not in your favor. You're silently communicating that your presence can be taken for granted, that your love is unconditional, even when it hurts you. And that, in his psychology, makes him relax, not into devotion, but into complacency. And loyalty can't exist in complacency, because loyalty rises from admiration and intentional commitment, not passive convenience. And here's the clincher. Men are loyal to the woman who makes them want to be better, not the woman who fills in all the gaps so they never have to be. And that's where lots of women fall into the trap of ride or die. They think by holding down everything, by proving their endurance and their patience and their deep love, they'll eventually be rewarded with that full, safe, fully present partner they've been pouring themselves into. But that's a lie. Loyalty doesn't grow from being everything. You're not giving loyalty a chance to form because you're erasing his need to step up and invest equally. And commitment without investment is hollow. Think of it like this. A man attaches to where his inner world is activated, where he feels inspired, admired, welcomed, yet challenged. A woman with emotional standards, healthy detachment, and an unapologetically full life activates that part of him, because she's not trying to be his oxygen. She's not gasping for him to stay. Her world spins regardless, and he has to rise to her rhythm or risk disconnection. And that isn't intimidation, it's invitation. The best kind. An invitation to show up as his highest self, to meet her at a level where real connection lives. Because deep down, that's what healthy men crave. Not a fan club, a partner, a woman who has her own blueprint, her own pace, her own internal compass that doesn't constantly point to him. And if that feels radical to you, if it feels unloving, even selfish, it's only because you've been conditioned to believe that disappearing into someone is how you hold them. That attachment means absorption. That proving your devotion means abandoning your needs. But no man, not even the perfect match, builds loyalty out of someone who always adjusts, always molds, always gives up first. What he's actually loyal to is the quiet strength of a woman who doesn't need to explain her standards because her actions speak. The woman who would rather be alone in her wholeness than partnered in her erosion. That's the kind of energy that changes how a man sees you. That's the energy that cuts through the noise of effort and lands directly into his subconscious as this is different. Because it is. It's rare. And men stay loyal to what is rare. Not what's perfect, but what is real. What is fully alive, grounded, emotionally intelligent. What demands energy, not absorbs it like a sponge. What mirrors to him who he is becoming, not what he can get away with. So the question isn't, what more can I give him to make him stay? The real question is, what version of myself am I showing up as that allows this connection to even exist? Is it the version that's waiting for crumbs and confused why a feast never arrives? Or is it the version that knows she is the feast and refuses to sit at any table that asks her to shrink? Because men don't miss perfect. They miss impact. They miss who they were in the presence of a woman who could hold power without apology. They miss the woman who didn't throw ultimatums but left. Quietly, with grace, because the moment she felt herself disappearing just to keep the relationship going, she chose herself instead. And if you can be her, not perfectly, but consistently, you don't just earn loyalty, you become the only place it wants to live. So let's get really honest now, because this is where everything changes. When you finally stop trying to earn your place in someone's life and start standing in the truth that you were never meant to prove your worth to anyone in the first place. The moment you release yourself from the exhausting trap of over-functioning, over-explaining, over-giving. The moment you stop needing a man to stay in order to feel secure within yourself is the moment everything about how you attract, connect, and keep love begins to shift. See, you were never supposed to be the woman begging to be seen. You were never meant to twist yourself into smaller shapes just to be palatable to someone else's comfort. You are not here to convince someone of your value through emotional labor and sacrifice. The women who are truly unforgettable, the ones who are respected, adored, and loyally chosen over and over again, don't need to offer their soul just to be kept. They simply don't compromise on being met where they already stand. And that can feel foreign when all you've known is love as survival. When all you've learned is to perform for affection, support without question, absorb mistreatment, and call it trying. But once you taste your full worth, unapologetically, you will never trade it again for the illusion of connection. That's the kind of emotional power men are instinctively loyal to, because they can't manipulate it. They can't dull it. They can't guilt it into submission. Real strength doesn't yell, doesn't lecture, doesn't chase. It simply is. It moves like gravity, silently determining who is meant to be there and who will fall off course. This is when men begin to rise differently, when they feel the presence of a woman who does not carry his emotional weight for him, but challenges him to meet her eye to eye. She doesn't punish him for pulling away. She doesn't beg him to come closer. She holds her center like the storm could never shake her. And that emotional stillness, that steadiness of presence, is what pierces deeper than any effort ever could. It's not about being cold. It's not about withholding love. Don't get it twisted. This isn't about games. This is about choosing to stop hustling for affection and letting men reveal who they are when they have to work to reach you. And you want that. You need that. Because genuine loyalty does not come from being convenient. It comes from desire plus respect plus emotional self-awareness. That's the formula. That's the truth. Real relationships don't survive on ease. They survive on energy. The equal and consistent investment from both partners over time without pressure. Many women fall into the trap of performance because they mistake emotional output for emotional connection. But unless he's giving at the same depth you are, you're building on water. You'll drown yourself trying to float a relationship that was never grounded. And then you'll confuse your exhaustion for love. Let that sink in. You'll confuse depletion for devotion, chaos for passion, anxiety for chemistry, and you'll call pain proof that you must really love him. That's what happens when you love from insecurity. But when a woman starts to love from clarity, from fullness, from rooted self-worth, her whole energy shifts. She stops proving. She stops overthinking. She stops accepting half-done efforts, unprocessed apologies, inconsistent communication, and emotional crumbs disguised as connection. She begins to remember that her value isn't demonstrated by how she shows up for others, but by how she shows up for herself, even when no one is watching. And let me tell you, that energy, that's the kind that flips a man's world upside down. That's the kind he replays in his mind years later when he can't seem to find anyone who matched it. Because loyalty doesn't bond to actions, it bonds to identity. How do you show up when you're not being chased? What version of yourself breathes in the silence after he pulls away? A woman deeply connected to herself becomes rare in a culture that begs women to abandon themselves for the illusion of love. You cannot be loved for someone else if you've lost access to love inside you. You cannot teach a man to respect you by lowering your standards in hopes he'll eventually catch up. And if you keep shrinking to fit someone else's bandwidth, you condition them to believe that your light was never meant to shine in full anyway. So stop doing more. Start being more whole, more honest, more emotionally unavailable to anything less than intentional effort. Watch how loyalty starts to follow the path of that energy. Not instantly, not magically, but naturally. Because you've removed the pressure, the performance, the pretending. And now, what's left is you, strong, open, not chasing, not flinching, not explaining your standards to anyone unwilling to meet them. So when he comes back, and they always do, it won't be your effort he's missing. It'll be the feeling of being near a woman who didn't bend to hold him, who didn't lose herself to keep him, who didn't need to fix him to feel valuable. And that's the type of woman who isn't just remembered. She's chosen, not because she begged, but because she walked. And because, even as she walked, she never lost her softness. She just refused to place it where it couldn't be nourished. So, what are men really loyal to? They're loyal to what challenges them to be better. They're loyal to peace that wasn't bought through self-betrayal. They're loyal to the woman who doesn't need them but welcomes them, who doesn't settle for half love, who doesn't confuse pain with passion, who doesn't live on emotional scraps and call it dinner. They're loyal to presence, to power, to standards enforced without apology. And the more you step into that version of you, the woman who protects her light instead of offering it to people still playing with fire, the more you'll see it was never about what you did for him. It was about who you became in the process of learning how to stop doing everything for someone who never deserved you at half capacity.